chatting to you about any aspects of the Microsoft Educational Transformation Framework or M365. If you don't want to do that, I've popped a little note into the chat there. You can always ask me a question in the chat and I will pick it up when I periodically jump back over and have a look at what you're asking me. For this afternoon session, this is one of a series of sessions that we're doing with you up towards Christmas, and they gradually build at looking at all of the aspects of the Microsoft Educational Transformation Framework and widely how that links with M365 and how that can be used to improve your school or drive your vision. And last time we had a good look at a couple of the pillars in the ETF, and then next time we will look at a couple more. So without any further delay, we are going to focus today on transforming communication in school. And the agenda for this afternoon session is really to focus in on the relevant ETF areas, but then we are specifically going to have a look at using Sway and Forms and briefly have a look at using Microsoft Translator and how that might fit into your school, how it may improve communication, and how you may more easily gather information that's coming into school, but do it in a way so you can reflect upon it and go back again. So as I've said, this is session 4, and really we are focusing on communicating with parents. We've then got 3 more sessions running up to the 10th of December. Before we go too deeply into the M365 apps that we're going to look at this afternoon, I just wanted to nip back over to the Educational Transformation Framework. It has those 4 key pillars of leadership and policy and teaching and learning and intelligent environments and also student and school success. And what we're going to look at this afternoon around improving communication with parents, it also could be used for improving communication internally in your school or your academy or your trust. And it touches on all 4 of the pillars really, and a lot of the subsections within those pillars, and it's pretty transferable. And whatever your vision is, what we're trying to do is give you a universal set of tools that may well be useful to you and could fit into whatever your area is. Last time, for the previous session, we looked at leadership and policy. We discussed your vision change strategy. We then looked at the structure you need in place for that, the continuous culture of improvement and striving for improvement and standards, and always looking towards what is next, but making it achievable so that everybody feels that they can also strive for the school vision. And then thinking about, well, how do we engage the wider community around the school to also support that, but making sure we don't leave behind the community within school at the same time. And then we focused on the teaching and learning. Very much about what we are doing is that pupils or students are at the very center of the learning that we want to undertake in school. This is going to be one of the core purposes and missions for us to deliver. And then around that, the curriculum that we are going to deliver needs to be engaging, it needs to be thought-provoking, it needs to develop that deeper learning and avoid those shallow learning experiences. But once we've got that quality of learning taking place, we're going to need to have the vehicle to assess progress and ensure that all pupils have a differentiated experience and that they can have a learning pathway that suits them. That may well link you back to the spaces you have in school to support the learning. It could link you to digital spaces online and the sort of apps that you use, or whether it's Teams as a digital environment, but also the devices you have for learning. Are they currently fit for purpose? Have you got planned investment? Do they pose limitations for currently how you might deliver the curriculum and pupil learning? And all of that was discussed in the previous session, but I want to bring that forward into this session. Something that absolutely will be key to the following session that we're going to have is your feedback from the assessment tool. A couple of people shared theirs last time, and anybody else who's already got their feedback from the assessment tool is where you are now and where you'd like to be. It will suggest some pathways that you could take. It will also suggest some resources that may be of interest to you and support you in that vision. But I'd like you to feedback on that during the next session if that's at all possible. So focusing back onto today and looking at the 4 pillars of the Educational Transformation Framework, it's very much a philosophy of a holistic approach. We can't ignore anyone in our school, we can't ignore their needs, but also we can't forget that we have to address all 4 pillars to be successful in moving into a change process that's going to realise our vision. And that's going to be a long-term process. Last session, I talked of a minimum of a 3 to 5 year plan, and that constant reevaluation of where am I? Is it still relevant to pursue the vision that I set originally? Do I need to reevaluate because of either new technologies that become available? Are there changes in the school? Have we changes in staffing? Have we got a different dynamic of pupils coming to us? And all of those need to be reviewed at least annually, and then go back and reevaluate your long-term plan for the educational transformation framework. Don't just accept that because you set it way back 3-4 years ago, that it's still relevant now. And we do that with school development plans, but we don't always do that with change management plans that focus on technology. So I wanted to make sure that people do go back and think about that process. And in that holistic approach, when we're looking at all 4 pillars today, intelligent environments and student success, along with the leadership and management and the teaching and learning aspects, we're going to focus on apps that can support communication. They could be communication between staff and pupils, or they could be communication between staff within a school, or they could be communication with staff and trust, or staff in other academies in a trust, or it could very well be that you are trying to communicate more effectively with people like parents who you need to get key information to. You need to make it as simple as possible for them to tap into that. And we'll look at ways we can do that this afternoon with M365 apps. We'll also consider, we collect swathes of data and information, and could we do that a bit more smartly, where we cut down upon the workload and maybe some of the administrative tasks that are involved, and then get some meaningful data and analysis out as quickly as possible. So the first of the M365 apps we're going to look at this afternoon is Sway. And Sway is a great alternative to presentations, and it avoids death by PowerPoint. Nothing wrong with PowerPoint. It has its place, but because it's been around for so long, I think we've all seen it numerous times, and we need a little alternative to introduce to our staff or introduce to our pupils in school. With Sway, we are this afternoon going to have a look at how you set up a storyline, and then how you lay out the flow of that storyline, and you gradually add cards together, and then how you can modify that Sway probably more easily than any other program you're going to use. You do have to be accepting that it will make a few choices for you, but that isn't a bad thing. So without any further delay, I'm just going to jump out of the presentation, and I'm going to jump across to a Sway that I've been using. Move over to there, and you should now see my web browser that I'm going to use for this afternoon. Sway can be installed on a Windows computer as a desktop application that can be downloaded and installed. If you don't have the rights to install on your own devices, just ask your IT support to deploy it inside of your Windows network. If you're using any other device, it's not a problem. I'm today working on an Apple computer. You could use a Chromebook. It will open perfectly fine as a tab in a web browser, and most of the leading web browsers will support it without issue. So the way that you find Sway and all the other apps that we're going to use for M365 this afternoon is you may find them in the landing page here, and a lot of the time in schools when you are introducing an account for pupils, they will have this as a landing page, but you can also find it in the app launcher up here in the corner. All of your apps either live here if you frequently use them, or you've pinned them, and if you want to pin an app, you can click there. This will be a case of unpinning it from the launcher for me, but you can pin it into the launcher so that it becomes your prioritized apps up there, or it may be in the all apps list and you just need to scroll down and find Sway down there, and there will be Sway. So either way you can get to Sway, and when you launch it, it's probably easier to launch it in a separate tab, and you'll arrive here initially. This isn't the end point of where you are going to work for Sway, but what you can initially do is choose to start a blank one. Use one of Microsoft's many templates, and you can get to more templates there, but it will drop you into recently edited Sways. And if you've got any that you come back to regularly, so I've got quite a few schools that have adopted Sways for newsletters to communicate with parents, and it works really effectively like that. It looks a bit like they're scrolling through a web page because of the animated nature of the Sway, makes it a bit more interesting, and it's easy to remix their experience so they don't become used to the same experience of a Sway week after week. You can change it around, but remixing it is a click of a button. It's not somebody wasting hours in the admin team reorganizing deleting it. So once you decide what you're going to do, whether you're going to open up a recent document or you're going to open a pinned document, it will swap over to another tab, and it will be this one here where you're welcoming yourself into Sway. You can create a new one again in exactly the same way as the previous tab. You can start from a topic if you wish, or you can start from a document. So you could take a document that exists in the Office 365, if the Office 365 in Office stack, such as Word, or you could take a PowerPoint, and you can bring it here into a Sway. So if you've got something that exists already, maybe you had a format that you were using previously for your newsletters, well, you can bring it in, and Sway will make the best of it it can, and it will put it into Sway format. Or you can start again. I usually like to start again. Although the import tool is pretty good, sometimes it will produce the odd quirk, and they can be hard to remove. So normally starting a new one is the way I would go. Down here, you've got your My Sways, your recently edited, ones that you've viewed belonging to anyone else. You've got your analytics of what you've been up to, so you can see the time that you spent in here. And if you delete any, they will end up here. And for a period of 30 days, you can go and hook them back out of the deleted area and pop them back into My Sways. So I'm going to go over to the editor section, and let's just dive right in and have a look at how we make one. So we could press new, but I started one a little while before. And you end up with cards. So the storyline is where you build up your flow of your Sway, and here you've got cards that drop in. So each of these rectangles are referred to as a card, and you'll start off with a header card whenever you come in, and the way you add more cards is by pressing the plus button underneath, and then you've got different types of cards you can add, and they may amend themselves depending on the previous card, but when you're starting from a header, you've pretty much got all of them open to you. So what I did was I added in a heading 1 card, and the heading 1 card for me down here was welcome to Turn It On School. So I may click underneath here, and I might decide to have some text. I may decide I want a picture. I could have a stack where, a bit like if you were using cue cards for presenting to somebody, and you've got those little tiny pieces of card in your hand, they stack on each other, and you can pull them from underneath each other and then go up on top. They're suggested, but in here you've got the broader term. So you've got two types of headings: main heading and subheading, and then body of text. You can also insert all different types of media. So yes, it will handle pictures, but you can embed videos. You could put audio clips in here. You could also embed code from other websites, or you can upload into there. And you can group. So let's, without any further delay, say that we've got our header here, and I'd like to add some text in. So it could be over here that we've got welcome to the first newsletter of the term, and you start to build up what you want to talk to them about. That's great. I could change the way that this text looks. So emphasize is the equivalent of bold in here. Accent is the equivalent of italics. You can add in bullet points. This is where you can enter a link. And then over on the side here, you've got two options. You can either have a wider focus or a narrower focus. You can change between the two, and you'll see how they correspond when you come to view this. So at the moment, we're in what's called a storyline, and storyline is where you build your Sway. You then go up to the play button to preview your Sway. If you decided this card, you know what, it's not right, it's not what I wanted, just press the delete and it will be removed, or you go down and you add another card in. So think of it a bit like building up Lego bricks, and as you build up those Lego bricks, they will construct different cards in the storyline of your Sway. So this time I'm going to go to media, I'm going to choose a video card, and what you now get here is the experience that you've got the options in here to either upload from your device, and that's fine. If you've got a video you've already pre-recorded, you can do that. You can drag it and drop it straight into the box where I'm hovering now that's turning green. You can also pick up a video if you're storing it in your OneDrive, so you don't have to go outside of your Sway. The thought, just like Teams being a single place, is that once you're in your Sway, you shouldn't have to go anywhere else, and you can search for sources. So this might be a video on schools. Let's see what we get. Let's refine that to primary schools and search. And what it will do through Bing, Google search engine, it will start to bring up videos from primary schools. Now you might want to have something, here's a day in the life of a primary school. So I'm going to click that video and I'm going to lock it into place. I can drag it across if I want to. There's the video in there. I can have a caption underneath. So it could be welcome to a day in the life and the life of our school. That's great. There's the video, and I want to get rid of that because it's cluttering my view. I can add in another card underneath. So I could have a stack of images, for instance, and then it might give parents that are coming to see this prospectus some still images. It could be that I have an audio clip, and it could be someone as head teacher giving a welcome, or it could be the pupils welcoming the parents to the school. It might be you want to embed to another website the school uses. So if you used an entirely different service, maybe use Kahoot for asking questions in class, and you wanted to give parents a flavour of the sorts of questions you get in the classroom, you can. Or you can have groups. Groups are really useful. So you can have automatic organization of photos, or you could have grids of photos, and you gradually add in photos here. So if I wanted to go tap to add content, and it might be an image over here, I'm going to drag them in. Let's just drag some straight across, and that one in there as well. And now I've got some images stacking up, so that takes care of that section. So if I go down to here, in the next set, I might want to have a grid. Well, that is pretty self-explanatory and harder to less of a problem to visualize. It is just like a table with little thumbnails of pictures. Comparison's pretty useful. So if you had two different exteriors of a school, so if we found a school that's fairly similar, so I'll have that one to, let's say, that one, modern school, to maybe an older school. And now I've got some content. I'm going to go and I want to see what it looks like because I'm in storyline mode. And I press the play button for that. And then up here comes my school prospectus, and I scroll down. And as I come down, here are all my cards together. Here's my comparison one, so I can drag backwards and forwards between the two, so I can see maybe if we'd had a new school built. Well, there's the old school, here's the new school. Look at the vast difference between the two. Here's the facilities that I can see, so I can click on them and I can get them in as a larger picture, or I can press close. And this will also scale to suit the device you're looking at. So if you're using a laptop, as I currently am now, it will scale to that. If you're using a tablet or a mobile phone, it would automatically scale too. So that I could try playing the video that's embedded. My broadband's going to work this afternoon, or also your filtering. It should play. I might just let that play on there. And then you can go back to editing mode, or you can go in here and there's various options that you can choose. You can have autoplay settings if things are going to play automatically when you get to them, such as video. You can have a delay before the person sees the video to play. You can have the content looping immediately. You can also change layout. I'll show you those a bit more when we look at remixes, or you can go back to the edit button and you're back here. So you've got cards that build up in your storyline, and communication. Well, it just started playing that video then. The idea is that you build cards to suit you in any order that you wish, and that it's not a big problem to delete or move a card. And if you wanted to reorganize something, you can pick up a section and move it up and drop it. If you wanted then to have that section above that section, I've just reorganized it by picking up and doing it that way. You've got quite a few options in there, but there's even more when you go to the design side. So at the moment, this is the design for my sway, but I've got other options in here. If I click styles, I've got a vertical scroll. I may not want a vertical scroll. I might want a horizontal scroll. I might want to just mix it up a bit for my parents as they come through, and that's absolutely fine. So I could have a side scroll instead of a vertical scroll, and then I'm scrolling across my experience instead of up and down my experience. I could also change it to be more of a PowerPoint experience where I've just got slides that I flick through. But given that Sway is so good at this flow, I'm just going to keep it either in a vertical scroll or just a horizontal scroll, and I will go with one week and one the other. I can choose to apply different themes quite quickly. So with things like PowerPoint, you might go in and you format the font, you format the backgrounds, the transitions, animations. And yes, it gives you a lot of scope to go down to quite a granular level, but you have to spend a long time doing it. What Sway does beautifully and quickly is that you can change things and you can mix them up a bit. So in here, it might be that I want green instead of black. And I'd quite like this fun way of looking at things instead of that very static way of looking at things. And I can quickly play around and it will remix things for me, literally on the fly. And then I can instantly have that set you can go in and force a change of font if you wish, because you don't like this. It looks a bit like Times Roman. But I would start to expect that you just get more chilled out and you lay back and you go, do you know what? I will have that as a theme, and that might work quite well for me, that I've got bars coming in from the side. I might want to preview what that looks like again. So here, when I scroll down, you've got bars flying in from the side, and as I added more, that would continue. So I'm going to go back and edit again. I'm still in the design mode, and I could hit the remix button. And when I remix it, this automatically does these options down the bottom for me. So it's completely remixed, and I might want to undo that. So I'm going to preview it first. Yeah, I don't think I like that. So I'm going to go back to edit, and I'm just going to press the undo button, and then it will turn it to where I was before. So the ability to change the way that a sway looks is very quick and easy, and you can get quite a nice output in a very short space of time. Where would you use this? I've used this successfully internally with schools, from staff to staff or trust to staff, to get information out and communicate internally. I've also used this very successfully in schools with newsletters for parents, as we've mentioned. I've seen PTAs or friends of schools as well adopt this, with an Office 365 account has maybe been created from the school. Equally, in the classroom, I've had massive success with this with pupils. They are probably bored because they've spent their entire life presenting things in PowerPoint, and all of a sudden there's something else they can use, and show them how to do a sway, and all of a sudden they will get to grips with storylines and cards, and they'll start producing the most engrossing interactive presentations or ways of communicating. It could be they use it for English, it could be project work, maybe they're presenting the findings from a scientific inquiry. All of those different options are there, and they can do it in a more engaging way than maybe standing at the board and pointing to a PowerPoint or trying to draw things on a flip chart, which is really cumbersome. They can prepare this in advance. In about half an hour, as long as they've got the information, they can quickly drop it into a sway. And then as long as they're confident with the function of a sway, which will take a little bit of time to get used to, the job is then quality of presentation and the information within, rather than the program being the stumbling block to being successful. If you want to go back to your sways that you've got prepared, you click over there, and here's a newsletter that I've mocked up for Turn It On. If I want to see what that looks like, I go to here. So in comes the heading, scroll down, I've got welcome bars coming in at the side. I've got my sliding tools there. I've enlarged one of my pictures. I've got a video there because this is a sort of STEM coding. And then here I would leave that open if this was a lesson, and I would say to pupils or students in secondary school, share your projects. And then I would openly invite them to collaborate in editing this sway with me. I wouldn't give them the only copy I have, but I would certainly give them the opportunity to come in here and share, either by screenshots, description, a recorded video of how they've created their algorithm for coding, exactly what we're achieving in my Turn It On School with Coding. That means you need to get people in. So the share button up here is really useful for that. You can choose whether you want to just share your sway with specific groups of people that have an account in your M365. You can give it to anyone with the link. If you're doing that, be absolutely sure that you wish them to be able to get to it, because you can go back in and change it afterwards. But for the period of time anyone is selected, it's fairly well out there. You can then choose to invite people to view, and that's what you do with things like newsletters or internal communication. But if you're talking about that lesson context, and as I just showed you, I wanted my pupils or students to come and drop in what they're doing with the algorithms in their coding, I might change that to edit, and then I share that link. The link could be dropped into a class team. You could put it into a document so they can pick it up from a service share if you want to do that more traditionally. You've also got the ability to set a password. So if you know that once you've got people's names in there, maybe you've got pictures of them because they've videoed themselves doing a piece of work, you don't want a data breach. So one way to protect against that is to ensure that there's a password on that document. And then you can choose whether other people have the ability to reshare. So if you don't want them to be able to reshare and share with their friends, untick the share button, and then they get to use it. But what they can't do is share it on or invite somebody else in. So if that's the case, I'm going to choose edit, and everything else I'm going to leave that as my share settings. And then traditionally, as always with Microsoft products, there's on the ellipses on the right there. Here's where you create a new one. If this was a newsletter I was using week after week, but I needed to keep the previous weeks, I would simply just come in here and duplicate. You can do that from the front screen as well. If you hover over the ellipses on the Sway, you can duplicate from there. You can save it as a template. So if this is your newsletter or internal bulletin, maybe it's your weekly staff bulletin, morning briefing bulletin, whatever it is, you can have it as a template. You can print it out. Sort of defeats the point of a Sway. A Sway is interactive. It has a flow to it. The storyline moves. The elements on the cards move around as you move through it. You can export it if you want to, so that it comes out and you can import it into another one. You can then also have settings for the Sway as well. So you could choose languages that it displays in. And what you can do is you can add in other languages, or you can change the language you're viewing in yourself. So if you knew that you were working in French and you needed to have French for France, then it could be displayed in French rather than English. So just like in Immersive Reader, in Teams and other apps that we looked at previously, you can improve your communication across the school with staff, and you can accommodate them. You can accommodate parents and guardians. You can also accommodate pupils when they've got EAL needs, that you can just have that all adjusted instantly. If I jump back in, I go to my settings for Sway. You can have the viewers can co-author and duplicate, but again, if you wanted to control that in a classroom situation, I'll normally untick that. Viewers are able to change the layout. Well, no, I wouldn't want that if it was pupils, and I probably wouldn't want that if it was parents. And you can also show Sway in the information footer. That's a footer at the bottom that gives information, and no, I don't want that. If I want the ability to change this looping, we can switch it on there, or we can switch it off there. So there's lots of capabilities that Sway has to hit various pillars in the education transformation framework. It could be the leadership element. It could be school. It could be teaching and learning. It could be the vision that you're going to accumulate your vision in a Sway. So it's a tool that will almost universally suit any purpose. And if you're bringing about change in school, you want things that are easy to pick up and run with and very non-threatening, especially for anyone who might find technology a challenge to bring into their classroom, or if it's a parent or a guardian that's viewing this, the last thing they want to be doing is grappling with it. They just want something they can pick up and read. Yes, they want it to be engaging, but what they don't want to do is for it to then cost them a lot of time. And Sway is that tool in M365. It can give you those elements. So we wanted to show it to you this afternoon to consider if it can fit into your school and it maybe becomes part of your vision for change, that actually we are going to adopt Sway for certain areas in the school. Or you may go, do you know what, that's lovely, but we aren't quite there yet. Or you may also go, no, thank you, I will stick with PowerPoint and actually Sway isn't for me. And the whole point of us working together this afternoon is that we show you the scope of this, we show you what it can possibly achieve, and then you go away and decide what you'd like to use. I'm just going to pause there. Anybody got any questions on Sway or anything we've covered so far? Feel free to pop them in the chat. Also, you could unmute and talk to me if you wish. Nothing? All right. I'll move on to the next area. I'm just going to reshare the presentation that we were using earlier. So we've covered Sway itself, and with that we are going to then move into Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft Forms has various guises, and it can be used across the school or trust. You may have traditionally sent out paper letters or forms to parents and use that for gathering in their responses, even if it's just you want your child to go on a trip, or you're surveying them something about something, or it might be for distance learning. Recently you want to understand the devices they have at home and that their child might be logging in, and there's lots of ways that it can be used in those contexts. It can be used for staff to survey them or gauge if the change is going to be causing an issue for someone, or if it's going to be unpopular, how you might accommodate the needs of those people. Equally, it's really powerful to use in the classroom. It's got not just a questionnaire function, but it's got a quiz function. In quizzes we've seen in some of the previous sessions, like Teams, where we were having maths quizzes, you can do the same as that, and I'll show you in a little bit how to build some class quizzes. Then you've got advanced features which can control the flow. And you could also, if you wanted to, move from the basic Microsoft Forms, and there is an advanced version of Microsoft Forms as well. You could also link, so Forms then connect with other apps in M365. So if somebody answers yes or no to a question, or they need to do something, it will branch out and launch that other app. So there's a lot of scope for what Forms can achieve. So without any further delay, let's jump across and have a look at what that can do for us. And you consider also if within your own education transformation it's relevant for you. You could use it somewhere in school. Quite often admin teams absolutely love this. I've seen quite a few leadership teams start to adopt this for various purposes in school. I'm going to move across and reshare the web browser. I'm going to move out of Sway. I just show you where to find Forms. So this is again the landing page. Forms is going to be there, or if you go to the app launcher, Forms will be here. Otherwise it's going to be down there in all apps. When you click on it, you will come into a form. So let me jump back into the beginning. It will land somewhere like this. And if you've been using it for a bit, you'll see a stack of thumbnails of forms. Here, where it says things like practice maths quiz, that's where I've generated one in Teams in OneNote Class Notebook. And it shows up here because although it's displayed in Teams, it's actually stored over here in Forms. So you choose whether you want to start a new form for gathering data, things like questionnaires, or whether you want to start a new quiz. People can also share their forms with me, and if anyone had bothered to do that, they haven't, I'd have them all listed here. And you can have group forms where you work together, and I'll show you how to set up group forms towards the end of this. But then you could all be working and editing a form together and creating it collaboratively, so it doesn't just fall upon you as an individual to make that form. With the forms itself, it might be here we've got the questionnaire demo. So when we start, let's go straight from the beginning actually. When I make a new form, you get yourself a title, you give it a title, and then very quickly you can start adding in questions underneath. There's different types of questions: multiple choice, text-based, which is short or long answer. You can rate things. You can assign, so somebody has to give a date that they've answered something. You can rank things from top to bottom. You can also use Likerts, which give you a grid with multiple choices. You can upload files through Forms as well, and you can gauge the popularity of something through a Net Promoter Score, and you can break forms into sections. There's lots of different ways to do that. So if you wanted to choose one, it might be a multiple choice. We'll call this form device survey. So we're going to use this to survey devices available for distance learning. You can give a description, so please let us know the devices you have at home. And then down here, question 1, what devices do you have at home? And really quickly, you can start to build one up. So option 1 might be computer. Option 2 might be a tablet device like an iPad or a Google Tab. Then you can add in another option. So it might be mobile phone. And you can keep going. You could say none, or you could add other option, and that allows an openness of answering. You can allow people to choose just one device, and if I left it like it is with multiple answers turned off, they could only tick one of them. But if I enable multiple answers, they could tick multiple options. You could also decide whether a question is required by you, and it absolutely has to be answered before they move on to another question. So I could pop another one in underneath just to show you. If you want them to do that, then fine, make it required. If you don't want to make it a stipulation that they completely enter the form and they have to answer every question, make sure that you switch that off, otherwise they're going to get really annoyed with you. Also then in here, you've got the ability to change the questions further still. So you can shuffle questions around, so you can shuffle the options so they don't always come in the same order. And if you got shuffle on, that's quite useful if you're using this as a questionnaire in a classroom to stop pupils all looking at each other's answers. But if I'm doing it sending home to some parents, I'm going to leave the shuffle options off. You can have a subtitle just like at the top there. You can have a subtitle if you need to explain your question further still. And then down here, you can have things branching, and I'll show you that in a little bit. So what it looks like over here, you can preview. And then here's my device survey. Up here, I've got my immersive reader. So if I'm sending something to parents, they can convert it into different languages, adjust font sizes, backgrounds, and so forth, just like we've looked at before for accessibility tools. And for them, they would tick the options. So they might have a computer and a mobile phone. If there's something else, by enabling the other box, they can write into me exactly what is there for the other box. And then they can submit that form in. It's there as a required answer. The other answer is, I'm not sure what you want here. Sure. And then I submit because it was a required answer. I've said, and they get a thanks, and you can change the message at the end. You'll see what you can change. The way that then previews, that's a computer version, but you can have a mobile tablet version. And what Forms does is it automatically scales. So if your parents are viewing it on a mobile phone or a tablet device, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to think how the layout is going to be. It will automatically scale, and it's taken care of for you. So that's one of the other benefits of using Forms from an end user perspective. In other words, that the parent or the member of staff doesn't have a clunky experience. But then for you, you get really nice responses. So you can see in here, I've got one response so far. It took 40 seconds on average to complete, but it starts to build up a picture, and I would get a nice pie chart in here of the different types of devices. That can be exported out of Forms and into Excel if you want to do some further analysis. But if I just want to have a quick look, viewing my responses gives me a nice overview without the burden of me trying to crunch data or create graphs in Excel. It's just there straight away. Now that might be a bit boring as far as that view, so I can go into themes and I could apply a theme. If I wanted it to be there more like that, I could have a plain theme if I just wanted a purple background. It doesn't have to be a picture. So I think what I'll choose is the hands up theme there. Or I could go into here and I could choose my own picture and my own color, and then it become a customized theme. So if you want to have something customized to your school, that's in there. So very quickly, you could make, if I turn off share and themes, you could quickly make a form and you could have it ready to go, and then you can share it out to people. Go and pop back over to a demo question form that I've prepared. So in here is a question that I might be sending to some parents, and it's a good way of getting parents on board and getting answers back in. And people tend to see a greater willingness in responding to questions that school ask, or quickly answering a few questions by using forms than you would from them filling out a piece of paper or having to go to a website, because they just tap the link and it's straight on their mobile phone and away they go. So the demo questionnaire that I've got set out here has different types of questions, and the easiest way of showing you the different types of questions is just to preview through them. Here I've got them split into sections, so it might say, well, what type of person are you? When do you work best, morning or afternoon? And this is an example of where things branch. So depending on what the person answers, morning or afternoon, it will take them to a different answer and different question straight after, sorry. So here, if I've answered afternoon, it will take me to the afternoon question. If I answered morning, it will take me to the morning question, and then it instantly hides the other question too, so I don't get bothered by it because it's not relevant for me. So please expect I like to get up there. To get up after 12 p.m. How did you find, and it might be how did you find the access to school learning resources? I'm going to give it a 4. You might then say, well, the date that I tried to access the learning resources, I tried to access them on Wednesday. Then you might say, well, it's a ranking question. I want to rank my subjects or my child's subjects in order. So actually, mostly they prefer maths, then it's science, and then actually English is at the bottom for them. I might want a rating question. So if this was a pupil filling this in, so they could do it for self-evaluation in the class words. I might say, well, I'm emerging at biology. I think I've mastered chemistry, and I'm somewhere around expected in physics. I could use one of those net promoter scores, which give me the scales. So how likely am I to be open with a growth mindset to try something today? I think I'm probably extremely likely to do that. And here I could upload a file if I needed to. If I needed to hand in a piece of work, or you were saying to a parent, upload something and give it back to us. Maybe it's your child's picture because we want to put it into Sims and we haven't been able to get the photographer in this year. So you could use that to upload files and get files in. You can decide the size of the file and the types of formats that you'll accept. Go on to next, future developments, and there's no questions in there. And then I would submit that form and you get the thanks. So I'm going to go back, and then over here in responses, I have a greater picture building up, and I can see by here as summary how that's building up for me as a school. There's my promoter score, that net promoter score is 50, or I could view the results individually, and I can go through one by one, and I think it's me that's filled in all of them, and I can see what each individual said to each question, or I can go back to the summary and I can see the summary results as well. So if I go back over there, the other things that you can do to get these out is you can share them quite quickly. And if I press share, I can choose again, just like Sway, whether it's only people that have an email address in my school as an organization, or it can be anyone that can respond. So here I've limited that option for anyone to be able to respond. So it's only people in my organization. I can either copy that link and I can send it to someone in a Sway. Maybe I'm sending it into another team internally, so it can go into Teams, because you can embed questionnaires in Sways as well. I could also get a QR code and I could pop that around the classroom. So pupils can be really independent in scanning a QR code with a device. It comes up straight in the web browser on their screen. Bang, they're into the questionnaire or the revision quiz I want them to do. I've got no lost time in learning, and the flow of the lesson's not interrupted just because I've got the QR codes there. I've also seen schools pop these on reception areas or external walls to maintain social distancing, so that parents are told, go and scan the QR code on the walls on the exterior of the school in different locations. They're not crowded together, but they're still able to get to the form really quickly. You can, here by sizes, 640 pixels by 480 pixels, you can embed this into things like websites as well. So there's the ability to put your form in there, or you can email directly to someone from here. So you've got various options of doing that, and it will then spawn or open up the email platform that you've got in your computer. And then that will just work for you to be able to email out one-to-one. It's great if you want to do one, but it's not so handy if you want to do it en masse. That's where it's better to embed the link and use the link as an option. You can share this as a template, and you can get the link to duplicate. So there's the link to duplicate your template. So if somebody else wants a copy of this, you don't want them wasting time recreating it, that's what you do. And we said about group forms, well, this is where you could collaborate together. So if you send someone that link, they will also be able to come in and edit your form just like you've started to do on your own. So there's various ways to get your forms out there, and they're quick, easy, and painless. The other options you have is you can make something multilingual. So here you can see I've included French, Dutch, and Polish, so that when someone views the form, they can change it to suit their language. So if you know the language that is spoken by the parents that come to your school or the pupils in your class, you can automatically give them that, so they don't have to edit it themselves. They can also print a static version. And the feedback, you can give feedback to Microsoft if you like to have a new feature directly here inside. The way that that looks for multilingual is it could be there for English, but if I wanted it in Polish, I can then reapply, and it starts to then change my form to be there for Polish. So there's various different ways that you can change that over, or you can go to Immersive Reader and change your language options in there. Once you've got your information in, it's so quick and easy to analyze. The other way to use it is in the class. So for teaching and learning, I may have created here a revision around STEM. So it's got a bit of maths, got a bit of coding, it's got a bit of science. The way that that looks for pupils is that picture there doesn't scale particularly well, so I need to go and find a better picture so they can see that algorithm. They might give a description for me here of what that algorithm's doing and how they could then debug it. There might be a question about maths, about acute and obtuse angles. And then down here, they've got the options to rank how things have worked in science. So this could be about evaporation and condensation. Wow, I can't speak this afternoon. And they could just reorder them in the sequence of events, and then they submit that in at the end. And then depending on, so let's say we've got some evaporation, then some melting, boiling, and condensation. Here I might say it's less than 90, and here it's it makes an algorithm loop. They're in there, and then I submit that. And it could be that the pupils, time has passed for the deadline, because you can limit the time that it's, the form's open for as well. So my form is closed, and then you could see that as a teacher back here if I hadn't just limited the time that was it was available for. And going into settings there, I will find here, yeah, I've closed the time and date on my form. So one of the other things you can do is you can force it to record the name of the person making the response in the form, which is really useful in the classroom, so you know which people submitted the answer. You can have the time it's available from and to, and you can also get notifications by email when somebody submitted something in the form. So what you don't have to bother yourself doing is continually coming back in here and checking, has someone put another one in? Is there another answer to look at today? You don't need to do that. One of the things I realized I skipped past and I didn't show you was in the demo version on the editing side, I didn't show you branching. So let me show you how I got that branching. If I went to add branching, here I showed you that I got a different question too, depending on whether I answered morning or afternoon. If you enable branching, you can choose from the list of questions you have which question it jumps to next, depending on a person's answer. More of an advanced thing to do after you started creating your form. So as well as creating sections, you can create jumps effectively, so that somebody doesn't end up having to answer a question that's irrelevant to them. So forms is really powerful for gathering data from a communication perspective in the wider school, for surveying and bringing that data back in and being able to then manipulate it in Excel. But also it's really powerful in the classroom for checking learning, progress in learning. Setting is a fun way to do a homework check. There's lots of different ways to use forms. And also it sits quite universally, again, across many different disciplines and pillars of the educational transformation framework. Any questions on forms? Just check if there's any questions in the chat or anyone who wants to unmute and ask anything. Any questions relating to forms, either for questionnaire purposes or for teaching and learning? No? All right, I will jump back over. The last thing that we're going to look at this afternoon is how to use something called Microsoft Translator. Microsoft Translator is extremely useful for reaching anyone that's got an additional language need, and it makes it quite seamless from your point of view that you don't have to worry too much about trying to either translate a written resource or trying to have a verbal conversation when it's really difficult. So Microsoft Translator is available as an app. It will be available on things like smartphones, whether it's Android or Apple iOS. You can install it as an app on there. It works in the web browser on almost any device, and it's also an app that you can install on a Windows computer as well. So there's lots of ways to get to it. And it's very powerful, and it's embedded into other M365 products. So for instance, it's in PowerPoint. It also will be coming to Teams quite soon. So there's Translator embedded into Teams. And it just takes away some of the barriers to reaching either pupils or parents. So you can join a conversation. You can also have it, as I said, in Word and PowerPoint, and people can just join from the app, and then they can listen to what you're saying, but in their language. And it can be on headphones, or they can be reading it on screen. With all of that occurring, I will jump across and I'll show you what that looks like in real terms, because it's easier to visualize if you can see it rather than me talking about it theoretically. Just jump back to the browser where we were looking at forms. And this time, Translator is not an app you're going to find here. You find Translator by going to www.translator.microsoft.com. And when you go to translator.microsoft.com, you will arrive at the page we can see here. And on this page, you're going to be actually working in one of two functions. You're either going to come here because you need to join a conversation and it's already being hosted by someone that's using Translator, so it could be you having a meeting with a parent and actually they don't speak English, but you still need to get them to understand what you're trying to do, either educationally with their child in school or pastorally, and you don't want it to be a barrier to communicating with that parent to have to wait for someone to interpret, or the child trying to do that on their behalf. Being able to use this tool is really powerful. So you'd give them a conversation code, and I'll show you what to do. They pop in their name, they can pop that in their own language, and they choose the language they are speaking in or they want to see communicated in a written way. So there's lots of them there, and they are growing all the time. There's text-only languages, and then up here you've got speech languages. They are working quite hard at Microsoft to expand those. So if you know that you've got a language in your local area and it really is a problem to get communication going, and that's something you wish to have, make sure you give that feedback to Microsoft and put it in as a feature request. The way that you will most likely be using it is to start a conversation. So I've used this quite successfully in classrooms, and the pupils have been sat there maybe listening to a PowerPoint presentation if I'm not using Sway, and they've got subtitles coming up underneath just as I'm naturally talking in the classroom, and they have a laptop in front of them or a tablet in front of them. Or I might have used this in a meeting room with a parent, as I say. So you'll need to log in, and the safest way to log in from a school perspective is to log in through your Office 365 account. It will sign you in automatically if you're signed in the web browser. You need to put your name. So I am going to put in Mr. Long. I'll be formal today. My language is English, and I might say I'm using it in a classroom, or I may not. So I'm going to tick, for this instance, I'm using it in a classroom, and I go into enter. And then what Translator will start to do is set itself up, and in real time, you might need to allow access to your microphone on your computer. That's a safety measure to stop people listening into conversations. It also says if you're going to use a headset, do it now, get it set up in advance. So it could be you're doing this in a distance situation, that you're communicating with someone over Translator over the internet. So to get people into Translator, here is the conversation code. It's at the top of the screen there. There's also a link that you can copy and send to people, or you can print the QR code. So if I jump out of that box, that is the conversation code there. And as you can see, as I'm talking now, it's listening to absolutely everything I'm saying, and it's appearing on screen. So it appears to me, if I have a pause point, it will start a new bubble, and I go again. It should start another one. Here we go. It will then pick up. There we go. It will then pick up another pause point and a conversation again. What the person gets on the other side from either scanning that or entering the code or copying the link is they will start to display in their own language. If they need to speak back to you, or you want to speak to them, you can either click the button here and start talking on there, and then their bubble will appear to you. But as it's only me in this conversation, I haven't invited any of you in, it will go there. It's in presenter mode at the moment because I chose classroom, but I can switch presenter mode off, and then it will not listen to me. It goes that way around. Language options that you've got in here, you can have the ability to show partial messages. So at the moment, if I've pulled from the nod, it will display it, but it will then listen if you want, so it only displays a complete sentence that makes sense, and it will make a judgment call on that. You can play speech output. So if you play speech output, it should start from their end, and audio displaying, and then also they can listen to that at the same time. You can mute everyone on, so you can turn the mute on and off. And for me here, I can't mute anyone because there's no one else in this conversation. I can also lock the conversation so nobody else can come back in and join, and it's safe. If I've got somebody that's got a visual impairment and that text needs to be bigger, I can increase the size of the text on screen. And at the end of this, I could save the transcript either as a transcript of what I've done in a lesson, or it could be a transcript of working with parents. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can then get the information back out of here. And when I'm finished, I just exit in the top right hand corner. But for everyone else, it says who I am, it says the language I'm using by default, and then they pick their own language there. And if I put it back in the presenter mode in the classroom, it should start to pick me up automatically, and away I go. So Microsoft Translator, again, is one of those M365 apps that may become part of your vision, that you know that it's really difficult to get communication with people, whether it be it staff, be it pupils, students, or parents, where you can't effectively communicate with them because you don't have a way of doing that. Well, Microsoft Translator can add that as an option there. So I'm just going to turn off presenter mode and stop it listening in. As far as today's session is concerned, those were the apps that we were focusing on. And what we really want you to think about is where they would fit for you in each of the 4 pillars. And they will, a bit like doing a school development plan, cross between the various pillars. And just how beneficial it would be for you to adopt them and use them in school. It doesn't have to be that you do use them, but choosing 1 or 2 out of those is often quite a frequent thing after these sessions. And they're very easy to get into. They're very easy to pick up and don't take a lot of time to get your head around. So a recap, when we come to join next session, we will be working in the educational transformation framework. We've got 2 more pillars to look at, as we covered 2 pillars previously. When we come to look at those 2 pillars, we will make sure that we spend some time recapping where you got to with your self-assessment and evaluation. So it's really important to bring those self-evaluation reports to the next session. And then I will ask you to also recap from the planning documents I gave you previous session if you started to do any planning of those, and I will also give you some more planning documents to support your journey in creating your vision for the next session as well. So all it remains for me to say is thank you very much for coming along this afternoon, and I'm really pleased to have had you here. If you do want to give me any evaluation and you're thinking, actually, I would like to give Martin some feedback, you want to give me any questions, you can email in to us. So if you want to send anything in direct to Microsoft, because we're running this program with Microsoft, it's educommunityuk@microsoft.com. Or to get hold of us on our general inquiries, it's office@turniton.co.uk. Or if you want any bespoke individual support, you can contact us on that address too. And then the evaluation form that we'd like you to fill in is something that's really useful to us. It helps us form what we're going to do next for programs like this. So I'm going to drop that into chat, and if you could spare a minute or 2 just to quickly go through the evaluation, very few questions. I'd value getting back just exactly how you feel this has gone for you and how things might be improved for you or anyone else that does this course in the future. So I'm going to hand over to you at this point and say, are there any questions? Is there anything you would like to revisit or discuss? Otherwise, I will let you go this afternoon, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions for anyone in here. You can type them into the chat, or you can pop them here. You can pop them into the conversation just by unmuting. I'm going to stop recording at this point as well, so that you get that